People say you should never judge a book by its cover. Those people are either Olympic speed readers or morons. What else are you meant to do? Accurately judging books by their covers is an essential bookstore skill, especially if you're trying to up your reading. Through the continual pain of buying terrible but well-marketed books, I have learned something wonderful that I want to share with you. The secret, arcane language of book cover bull. So consider this a primer. So, before my next review, which is going to be all of Gillian Flynn's books so far, I wanted to address the most common request I've had from my channel, which is, Cosmo, I'm a guy or a gal, and I walk into a bookstore, and I don't know what to do. Where do I start? How do I go about finding books I'm going to really enjoy? And so I'm starting with book covers because that's the most likely thing that will trip you up, or at least it's what trips me up the most. And if you like this video, then I'll do others. But let's game this out. You walk into a bookstore, you walk over to the fiction section, you see the plinths and the tables all laid out. What is good to be aware of straight away? Well, one, a bookstore isn't hallowed ground. It might feel like it. It does to me, but never forget, you're constantly being sold to. Every book in a bookstore has a cover, and every cover is a pitch, and every pitch starts with a cold read of who you are, what you like, and exactly how easy it's going to be to persuade you to buy that book. Most covers are calculated attempts to play the odds on what kind of person will be easiest to get to the checkout with this in their hands, preferably without even reading the first few pages. With that in mind, what kind of books do you like? And does this book in its presentation trigger feelings that you have for books that you already love? I am an absolute sucker for this. Any book that mentions one of my bookshelf forever picks instantly bypasses the judgment section of my brain, and instantly I'm tapping my card at the checkout and walking out of the bookstore and then realizing, I've been had. I'm that guy. Here's an example of a book that cold read me. Michael Chabon's The Yiddish Policemen's Union. I cannot read this book. It is incomprehensible. But as so often the way with Chabon's books, God damn, they have nice covers. From the back, I thought this is going to be a Chandler-esque thriller with wit and brains. And then you start reading it, and, oh, God, it's so turgid. It's so difficult to get through. And you go, oh, you fucked me, because you knew I love Raymond Chandler. I love hard-boiled detective fiction. And I clearly think I'm cleverer than I am. Man, I should have read the first few pages of this one, I'll tell you. That was a lesson well learned. The number one thing a book cover is trying to do is tell you something it thinks you want to hear, rather than what's actually true about the book. Always remember that to a publisher, you're a customer before you're a reader, and their principal job is to get you to buy whatever's in your hands, good, bad, or indifferent. And the easiest way they have to bypass the rational part of your brain is to trigger your enthusiasm for something that you already love. And that becomes very evident when you look at the covers. 2, how derivative is the artwork and the tagline on the front? You really don't need to know much about books to see just how similar so many of those covers will be on that plinth or sitting on that table, particularly when they're arranged in genre. And that's one of the most depressing and cynical things about genre fiction in particular, is that it seems like the vast majority of book covers ape one particular author or one particular book in the hope that it'll kind of trick you into thinking that it's exactly the same. Now, we got to say, there are lots of brilliant books that have terrible covers, and there are lots of terrible books that have great art. But if you're looking at a book on a table and it just looks like a shameless knockoff of the one next to it, and the tagline makes no sense, that's not a good sign. Okay, so this is an example of a terrible cover and a incoherent tagline. This is Hunted by fellow Scot Abir Mukherjee. I haven't reviewed this because I just didn't want to crap all over someone who seems like a nice guy. This is not a good book. The cover is really difficult to understand. It's kind of like a time glass, but then it falls onto a city, but it has this guy walking along. Is that a desert, or is it just the top of the sand? Has it at the back as well. So you've got kind of like a complete muddle, kind of with the Lee Child only, sole figure walking on the back. And then the tagline, you can't save your kids, but can you stop them? What the does that mean? Off the top of my head, Sajid Khan is trying to stop a terrorist attack on US soil. The perpetrator is his daughter. That's not a good tagline, but at least you know what the story is. I mean, this is the perfect example of a book covered in accolades, whose cover kind of does tell you that this book isn't going to be very good. And now we're diving into what's written on the book cover. That's, again, the first thing to look out for. 3, direct comparisons. Refuse to believe them. There are 2 main types of direct comparison. There are comps and there are freebirds. Comps are what an author uses to pitch to an agent. And they say, please read my manuscript. It's great. It's like X, Y, or Z. And if the agent loves the book, they'll use those comps to sell the book to the publishers. And if the publisher prints the book, they'll use those same comps back on you. From the beginning of the process to the end, those comps are never useful and they're almost invariably untrue. Freebirds are different. Freebird is the one big hit an author had that is brought out on every single book they publish afterwards. It's the quote on the front that says, hey, remember this guy? They wrote that thing you read once. This is just as good. Freebirds are no more reliable or useful than comps. So there's another kind of semi-comparison. I call it the throat puke comparison. And that's when some Burke takes a famous author or a famous book and then they compare it with another author or with a celebrity or with a generation in a way that's so fatuous it immediately like magics puke into the back of your throat. Like it's Bonfire of the Vanities written by Mr. Beast. It's Mickey Spillane imagined by Margaret Atwood. It's Azuma's Iliad. It's so infuriatingly insincere and untrue. Throat puke comparisons are written by cultural critics with the express intention of getting onto the back of book covers for their own personal clout. That's all that is, and it has nothing to do with the book. So a great example of a completely specious comparison is Act of Oblivion. I think this is actually really rude. It says on the front, his best since Fatherland. I would be pissed if I was Robert Harris at that. I mean, he wrote Fatherland in 1990? He's written 10 bestsellers since then. Fatherland was a speculative historical detective story. It was Robert Harris's debut as a novelist. And he started writing it when Margaret Thatcher was still the Prime Minister of Britain. Act of Oblivion is a deeply researched piece of historical fiction, a fugitive chase based on a true story set 300 years before Fatherland and is utterly different in every way, shape, or form. There is no useful comparison between these 2 books. That is such a dumb Freebird quote. So, you've sidestepped the cold read. You haven't been like me and just bought something because you go, oh, I'm the kind of person who likes things that look like that. You've evaluated the cover and the tagline. And you've avoided the stupid comparisons. Now, it's time to dive into those quotes on the front and back. And let's take another look at Hunted to do this. Good quotes about good books tend to be unique, specific, and genuinely heartfelt. Quotes that are lies tend to all fall into the same kind of buckets. And the biggest red flag of all, which you can see here, are the one-word quote. Amazing, hilarious, phenomenal, moving, shocking. This is the easiest single way to spot a book that isn't very good, because the best a publisher can find is like a single word out of context, or that's the most that any self-respecting author will commit to, is just a single adjective. They mean nothing. They could be completely quoted out of context, and it's safe to assume whatever that word is, the book will be the opposite. My general rule is if you have more than 2 one-word quotes on a cover, front or back, that's a pretty good sign that the book's going to suck. Next up, you have This Is So You. You'll love it. It'll make you laugh out loud. You're bound to cry at the end of this one. Let me ask you something. If you asked me my opinion of literally anything and I said, well, I think you'll love it, is that an endorsement? Similarly, we have I verbed. I cried. I guffawed. I was shocked. Okay, when? We hear a lot about cheapening public discourse at the moment, but this rubs me up just the wrong way as well. Constantly lying about our feelings in public makes us collectively less honest, less authentic. Have you ever seen someone in public reading and crying? According to book covers, it happens all the time. I mean, according to these publishers, every second person who picks up the list of suspicious things is sitting in a puddle wailing. I just dislike the fact that we accept these lies and we don't challenge them. And I wish the kind of reviewers who use I verbed would just ask themselves, what if the person who wrote the book that I'm about to be quoted as saying made me weep tears of poignant joy? What if that person turns out to be the next J.D. Vance? Will you admit that you were lying about your feelings then? Then, on the other side of the inauthenticity gap, we have a category I call the bare minimum. It will keep you guessing. It will make you smile. I kept turning the pages. A good thriller should keep you guessing. A heartwarming story should make you smile. You should want to turn the pages of a book you're reading. If it's a good detective story, you shouldn't be able to work out who the murderer is before you get to the end. Doing these things are the baseline for being considered to be a book in that category. They are absolute givens. And that includes a good start. The start of a book is its audition to you as a reader. And if the start isn't any good, then it hasn't passed the threshold for you to read anymore, let alone buy the thing. So any quote like, sets off like a rocket, starts as it means to continue, the opening pages will suck you in, is only a really good indication that the person writing that quote only read the first chapter. So let's turn to the classier side of town for our next category, which I call redirects. They're the quotes you see that say things like, X is a one-off. Everything Y does is amazing. I'm so jealous of Z. I think of these as Manchurian Candidate moments because you're asking, what's the book like? And their response is, this writer is the greatest, most fantastic person I've ever met in my life, and I love them. That's not what I asked. Redirects give you no information about the book whatsoever. Normally, they're a sign that the author and the quoter are good friends. And a redirect is often the sign of a class act of an author who really likes a writer, who doesn't want to lie about the book, but who wants to do a solid for their friend. Another category that's more honest, if unintentionally so, is the kind of false praise that you'll read from somebody who kind of wanted to say something nice about the book, but couldn't work out how to. Words like weird, unsettling, complicated, self-assured, similar to the dreaded defies categorization, often mean things like, I couldn't understand this, I didn't really like it, I can't stand the author. Now, this doesn't mean the book is bad. It means whoever was reading it couldn't very quickly put it into the box that they wanted to and move on with the rest of their day. There are more categories out there, but we're going to move on to the dangerous for a potential author part of this video, which is 5. Beware the one who quotes. There is almost always a name beneath that quote, and some of those names belong to authors whom you simply cannot trust. But let's get publishers and magazines out of the way first. The kind of publication that's being quoted on a book cover generally has more to do with the kind of person they're aiming the book toward rather than anything else. So if there's a quote from The Guardian, they think you're younger, urban, and cool, or it's about a theme that they think will resonate with Guardian readers. If they're quoting, I don't know, The Economist, I saw on one of my detective stories, that means they think that you think you're smart. If they're quoting the Mail on Sunday, they're telling you this book is accessible. Quotes from publications tend to be longer, and I believe them to be slightly more honest. In terms of, if you take a quote out of context from the New York Times, you're likely to face more consequences than if you did the same to Alan Carr. Only a few books will have quotes from both the Mail and Guardian, and if they do, then that's a really good sign. If a publisher can confidently use quotes from the kind of newspapers that don't agree on anything, then that book clearly appeals to a lot of different people. But when it comes to authors and celebrities, let's go there. Some famous authors are quoted so regularly that their praise means almost nothing. Others turn up on bad book covers so frequently, you wonder if that might be a side gig. And you can see that a lot of smaller authors look at getting a quote on another book cover as the opportunity to get their name next to Lee Child or James Patterson. And as a result, they'll say virtually anything. So the first thing you have to ask is, are they saying anything useful, or is it just gushing nonsense? And then secondly, have you ever heard of them? Because if they're not saying anything insightful and you've never heard of them, who the are they to tell you anything at all about this book? Number 3, is the name a magic dust name? That's a writer who's so big that the publisher hopes that a little magic dust will fall from their name and cover the book and make you instantly go googly-eyed and buy it. Does that name belong to a brand as much as a writer? And with those magic dust names, they're on so many book covers, it's really difficult to believe that they have the time to read that many books. I don't think it's possible. To be specific, I'm talking about names like Stephen King, as I said, James Patterson, Lee Child. Then further down the list, you have more kind of genre-appropriate magic dust names. You're talking about Mick Herron, Ian Rankin, Michael Connolly. I think a lot of those authors are pretty class acts, and they'll generally only supply an adjective or a redirect if they don't have time to read the book or they don't think it's that good. But some of these guys have really mortgaged their reputations, and others seem to be part of a rent-a-quote gang whose presence means that you couldn't really find anyone to say something genuine about the book that's in your hands. On that list, I would put Marion Keyes, Adam Kay, Rob Rinder, and Steve Kavanagh. And when I'm looking at American fiction, I regard any quote by James Patterson, Michael Connolly, or S.A. Cosby with extreme skepticism. Simply put, I do not believe the things that they say about books, and I do not believe that they believe them either. Their names are a bad sign when I see them on a book cover. There's one other prominent piece of text that might be on the front or back cover that we haven't talked about yet, and it goes a little something like this. Longlisted for the Naval Gaze Award 2025. Winner of the Silver Psycho at the Crimey Crime Guild Alliance. Winner of the Jacob's Cream Cracker, Starbucks, Foster's Beer, Bookie Prize for Writing and Social Justice, previously known as the British Rhodesian Medal of Literature. These prizes tell you the consensus among a very small number of people who all live and work in the right cities and in the right places, and who are very, very integrated into the incestuous stew of what agents and publishers and newspapers and certain writers have agreed is important right now. And their decisions as to what is award-worthy has no more consideration or authenticity than any of the other material on the book cover. Prizes will not tell you how good a book is. They won't tell you if most of the people in the jury actually liked it. They won't tell you if the book will stand the test of time. Most importantly, whether or not a book has won a prize tells you nothing about whether you will enjoy it or not. Ignore the prize stuff. It's meaningless. And finally, what about a book that has no quotes whatsoever? Well, so long as you're in a bookstore, it's a legitimate book. It doesn't look like a complete knockoff of something else. No quotes is generally a pretty good sign. It shows that the people who published it are kind of confident in the logline and the back cover, the first chapter, the buzz surrounding the book. Or it's already sold 1 million copies and you've probably already heard of it. I love it when a book doesn't have any quotes on it. I think that that's great. So I promise I'm not trying to be grumpy or negative or cynical. I want you to have all the information that you need to make the best book purchases you possibly can, so that you go back to the bookstore again and again and you don't get burnt the hundreds of times that I have. But wait. Cosmo, you say, for all your talk of publishers and authors lying to you, you promised to translate Bullsh into English. And for all your talk of categorizations, you haven't delivered. Fine. Here's the secret code that will translate all book covers from what they say to what they mean. But I warn you, once you hear this, you can never go back. Proceed with caution. Are you ready? What words really mean on book covers? Sensitive means boring. Cozy means stupid. Thrilling or propulsive means the book has short sentences and chapters. Spine-chilling means the book tries to scare you but only partially succeeds. Warm means well-meaning but crap. Hilarious means there are jokes, whereas funny means the book is so unfunny it couldn't even pass the threshold to be described as hilarious. Transgressive means there's a 90% chance a male character will lose their willy. Raw means the author uses the word more than I do. Compassionate or empathetic means self-indulgent. Contemporary or timely means that characters will get very angry about race, gender, or both. Inventive means pretentious. Clever means complicated or confusing. Smart means annoying. And confident, hyperconfident, or brash means really annoying. Delightful means awful, whereas a delight means a miserable slog. Genius means the author is a personal friend. And finally, the red flag to end all red flags is the word fun. Fun means there is nothing else you can say that is good about this book. If you see fun, you should run. Now, like Adam and Eve, you have that poisoned fruit of knowledge. You can translate bullshit into English too. So next time you go into a bookstore, you'll be like Tom Hanks in the Da Vinci Code, uncovering all of the secret truths around you. Maybe you're skeptical. You're wondering how what I've said stacks up in reality. Well, I took all of these books here and I did a book cover bingo section of this video. Then I realized you might have shit to do today, so I've put that in a separate video that will come up here as soon as it's finished. So that's it for this week. What are your book cover red flags? What words do you hate to see on book covers? What categories do you think that I missed? Let me know. No links this week except for the website of where I am this month, which is the beautiful and inspiring Clashnetti Art Centre in Strathdon. If you're an artist or a filmmaker or a musician or an idiot trying to finish a book, I don't think you can find a better place to be. If you like this video, you know what to do. If you really liked it, head on over to the Substack where there's book cover bingo and me being really mean about list of suspicious things. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.